For 7 years, I had been in a secret relationship with my brother's best friend, Jason Ramirez. One night, after drinking, he looked at me with a playful smirk and said, "Zoe, I'll find you a better man. Stop clinging to me, okay?" I replied calmly and obediently, "All right." It was because, in a past life, I had refused his suggestion and insisted on marrying him. After our wedding, Jason ignored me, deliberately distanced himself, and made me feel invisible. Even when I was 8 months pregnant and suffered severe bleeding after a car accident, he was attending a concert with his heartbroken secretary, Shireen, enjoying her favorite band. It was only then I realized he was someone else's salvation, but he was never meant to be my soulmate. When I said all right, Jason froze in place. He hadn't expected me to agree so readily. The dim light of the private lounge cast soft shadows. His handsome face was tinged with an unusual flush, but his eyes remained clear, showing no sign of drunkenness. I sat composedly, my posture graceful and polite, a faint smile gracing my lips as I looked at him. At that instant, his earlier laziness vanished. Jason straightened his back and asked with a solemn expression, "Zoe, did you hear what I just said?" I nodded. "I heard you clearly." In the past, whenever he said something like this, I would pout, act playful, and beg him not to bring it up again. But now, my emotions were as calm as still water, as if I were merely a spectator watching a scene unfold, untouched and unmoved. "Zoe, you." Before he could finish, my brother Eve returned from stepping outside. He entered with a teasing grin. "Guess who I just saw outside?" Without waiting for a response, Eve continued, "I saw your ex-girlfriend. She seems drunk and was being helped into another lounge." Before he could finish his sentence, Jason shot up from his seat and strode out of the room. Moments later, the sound of commotion and shattering glass echoed from the hallway. I remained in my seat, unfazed, casually eating the peeled tangerines from the fruit platter. Jason liked fruit but hated peeling it. Every time, I would carefully peel it for him and place it in front of him, and only then would he take a few bites. Eve often teased me about it. "You're so good to him. Why don't I ever see you treating your real brother like that? Could it be that you like him?" Many times, I was tempted to reveal my relationship with Jason, but Jason would always gently pat my head and speak first. "Maybe, in Zoe's eyes, I'm more like a real brother than you are. Little sister spoiling her big brother, do you have a problem with that?" Over time, I understood his intentions. He didn't want anyone to know about us, so I kept silent as well. For 7 years, no one knew about the relationship between us. Now, Eve stood by the door, watching the chaos unfold outside, waiting for the right moment to intervene. Glancing back at me, still calmly eating fruit, he teased, "Zoe, your dear Jason just got into a fight. Aren't you going to help him?" I swallowed the last slice of tangerine and shook my head. "My arms are too thin, and my legs too weak. I'd only get in the way." Hearing this, Eve raised an eyebrow but said nothing more as he stepped out to assist. I stayed in the lounge for a long time, long enough for the noise outside to quiet down. Only then did I get up and walk out. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I saw Jason carefully holding another woman in his arms, his ex-girlfriend and future secretary, Shireen. Shireen was drunk. Her body was soft as if it had no bones, leaning heavily against him. Jason didn't push her away. Instead, he held her tightly, as if afraid she might slip away. Jason's deep, dark eyes showed a hint of anger mixed with concern, emotions he himself probably hadn't realized. Eve sauntered over, raising a brow as he teased, "Zoe, do you think those two might get back together?" His voice wasn't particularly loud, but it was enough for Jason to hear. Jason looked up abruptly at Eve's words. When his gaze fell on me standing not far away, a fleeting trace of guilt appeared in his eyes. "I never thought about getting back with her," he explained, his voice hurried. "She was just drunk." I smiled faintly and shook my head. "Jason, I understand. Shireen seems really drunk. You should take her home." He frowned slightly, seemingly displeased with how I addressed him, but he didn't reject my suggestion. As he led Shireen away, he even turned back to instruct Eve, "Don't let her wander around too late. Take her home early." Watching their departing figures, a sharp pain pricked my heart. Yet, at the same time, I found it painfully ironic. In my past life, I had married Jason as I had always dreamed, but I didn't get the happiness I wanted. On my birthday, I wished for nothing more than to spend a quiet day with him. Instead, he told me, "Celebrating birthdays is a waste of time. I'm busy. I don't have time for that." Later that day, I saw photos on Shireen's social media of them hiking and camping together. When my stomach ulcer flared up, and I asked him to accompany me to the hospital for a checkup, he said, "I'm not a doctor. Having me there won't make you better. Don't bother me." Yet I found out later that he had taken Shireen to the hospital for nothing more than a mild cold. When I was 8 months pregnant and suffered massive bleeding from a car accident, the doctor called him urgently, asking him to come sign the consent form for surgery. However, his reply was as cold as ice. "Is she dead? If not, don't call me." As his words echoed through the phone, I heard Shireen's excited voice in the background. "Jason, this concert was totally worth it. They're finally on stage." The call ended, and blood soaked the sheets beneath me, spreading rapidly until half the blanket was stained red. The crushing pain in my heart from my death in my previous life felt suffocating as I remembered it. Clutching my chest, I let out a bitter smile. "Jason, if you never loved me, then I won't love you anymore either." That night, Eve took me home just in time to meet the curfew our father had set. The next morning, I woke up groggily and reached for my phone to check the time. What greeted me instead was a message from Shireen. She sent a photo of Jason sleeping at her house, along with the caption, "Jason stayed at my place last night to keep me company." Seeing her message, I felt nothing. I replied curtly with an O. I ignored her after that, but she wasn't willing to let it go. Soon, she sent another photo, this time of breakfast. "This is the breakfast Jason made for me this morning," she wrote. "He even made me heart-shaped fried eggs, my favorite." Jason had never once stepped into the kitchen when he was with me. He always said the kitchen was a woman's domain, and men shouldn't enter. So, for him, I, a person who had never cooked before, enrolled in a cooking class just to learn. As long as I was there, he always had warm, home-cooked meals waiting for him. But seeing how much effort he put into sharing, I realized just how ridiculous I had been. I glanced at her messages, didn't reply, and calmly set my phone down to continue eating breakfast. 5 minutes later, a message from Jason popped up. He didn't mention last night at all, instead saying, "The yam and pork rib soup you made last time was pretty good. Make some for me today and bring it to the office. Oh, and don't add scallions this time." Seeing the message, my expression darkened slightly. Jason didn't have a habit of avoiding scallions. In fact, he always believed scallions enhanced the flavor of soup. After a moment's thought, I replied with a simple, "Okay." Once I sent the message, I decisively opened a food delivery app and ordered a random yam and pork rib soup to be delivered to his office. That evening, I went out to dinner with my brother. We had just arrived at the restaurant we'd reserved when we saw Jason and Shireen walking in, arms linked and smiling sweetly. The moment Jason spotted us, he instinctively let go of her hand and walked toward us. Shireen's expression faltered for a brief moment, but she quickly composed herself and approached with a smile. "We're late, and there aren't any open tables. Would you mind if we joined yours?" Without waiting for a reply, Jason sat down next to me. Eve's eyes widened in surprise, and he quickly stood up, pulling him to switch seats. "What are you thinking? How is it appropriate for me to sit next to her?" Reluctantly, Jason let himself be nudged into the seat across from me. His eyes carried a hint of displeasure, as if waiting for me to say something. Avoiding his gaze, I handed the menu to Shireen. "Shireen, why don't you order what you two would like? My brother and I have already decided." She took the menu with a smile, trying to appear natural. "Zoe, the yam and pork rib soup you make is so delicious, much better than anything sold outside." Her words confirmed my suspicion. The soup Jason asked me to make was for her. I smiled faintly but said nothing. Eve, however, seemed impressed. She had this sudden urge to take cooking lessons a while ago. I was worried she'd blow up the kitchen, but it turns out she's a natural. I wonder which lucky guy will benefit from this in the future. Jason had been smiling subtly, but at those words, his smile faded. Slowly, he sipped his tea and asked calmly, "Zoe, are you thinking about dating?" I looked at him in confusion. Recalling the words he said in the private room that day, I nodded slightly. "I'm 26 this year. It's time for me to start dating. If you know someone suitable, I'd appreciate an introduction." "You've finally come to your senses." Eve was more excited than anyone. Laughing, he said, "I've been trying to set you up for ages, but you kept refusing. Now that you're finally open to the idea, I'll do my best to find you a great boyfriend." After Eve's words, Jason's thin lips pressed tightly together. His sharp gaze stayed fixed on me, as though trying to read my emotions. Shireen noticed the shift in his mood and giggled. "Zoe, you're so lucky to have such a great brother. I'm honestly a little jealous. But you know, I think Jason is pretty great." "What if?" "Don't say such things. Zoe is my little sister." Jason interrupted her with a frown, his tone laced with faint reproach, though his expression held only exasperation. I nodded in agreement, smiling. "Exactly. I see Jason as my own brother." "Shireen, you shouldn't joke about things like that. And honestly, I think you and Jason are a better match than me," I added. Jason's face darkened instantly. His eyes glinted with faint anger as he gave a sharp laugh. "Is that so? Well then, how about I introduce someone to you? Would you make time to meet them?" "Sure. Thank you in advance, Jason." I smiled brightly and agreed without hesitation. For the next few days, I didn't contact Jason, and he didn't contact me either. Instead, it was Shireen who showed up at my door. When she arrived, both Eve and I happened to be at home.